Racing Rivals was a mobile drag racing game from 2013 to 2019. This is gonna be a super condensed video about the history of Racing Rivals and what happened to it, but I also made a much longer and detailed video about the full story of Racing Rivals, which you can check out after. Initially released in 2013 for iOS and a year later for Android and Facebook gaming, Racing Rivals was fantastic. The racing was very straightforward, but every car drove differently, and after some practice it was really satisfying to see your progress. In fact, if you were confident enough, you could bet with other players, not only cash but also your car. The fact that you could win opponents' cars in races eventually spawned a whole black market where players would lose pink slip races on purpose to sell their cars, and certain players, like me for example, eventually became actual car dealers in the game. Thankfully, there was a huge amount of cars in Racing Rivals, spanning from D-Class Civics to the R3 class Koenigseggs and Paganis, but in between you had everything from a Golf Harlequin to the absolutely classic S-Class turf cars. Speaking of turf cars, those were the main rewards of Turf Wars, which was a weekly chance to prove yourself in the world of Racing Rivals. Top teams of up to 20 people would win exclusive cars that you couldn't get anywhere else, and they were some of the rarest and most valuable cars ever to be released in the game. Most cars in the game were customizable with different paint and rims, but on some cars you could also change the body kits, but since we only have 5 minutes, that's enough about the cars. In November of 2014 we got the 3.0 update, which was absolutely massive. The car classes have been quite restructured, but we also got the shipyard, where you could win exclusive cars, brand new matte paint and even glow rims. The update was a big success, and 2015 proved to be an absolutely massive year for Racing Rivals, where we got tournaments and new cars pretty much every week, and the community was growing rapidly. You could hop into multiplayer with any car and find someone to talk to and race with, and I'm sure a lot of you guys, as well as me, made a lot of friends over this game. Racing Rivals was made in a way that put emphasis on the community like no other mobile racing game before or since, and back in the day it was one of the most fun experiences you could have, unless you got scammed, but we'll save that for the full story of Racing Rivals. Unfortunately, behind the scenes things weren't quite so good. I had the absolutely amazing chance to interview the project manager of Racing Rivals, which should be out the same week this video releases, and I learned some very unfortunate and sad details about why the game ended up taking a turn for the worse after the end of 2015. There were a couple of more great features and updates throughout late 2015 and 2016, but the one I wanna highlight isn't quite so great. The 6.0 update in November of 2016 was a disaster. The UI, car visuals and the tracks were completely overhauled and it just didn't feel right. No one was complaining at the graphics before, so why do it? Even the developer team eventually admitted that the 6.0 update was a failure, but thankfully the game, well, most of it was still intact. While the golden era of Racing Rivals was clearly gone, we continued racing right until the next massive disaster, which would eventually kill Racing Rivals. By late 2017, a huge chunk of the original development team already left, and the game was picked up by Carbonated, and these guys just didn't know what made Racing Rivals Racing Rivals. They saw the imploding in-game economy and they were like, screw that, we're starting over. The 7.0 update would see all players start from scratch. All their previous cars would be put in the legacy garage where you couldn't really do anything with them. They changed the way all cars raced. You couldn't even choose your opponent in Turf Wars anymore, and remember the exclusive turf cars I mentioned previously? You wouldn't even get actual cars anymore, you would get like blueprints, which felt far less rewarding. Before 7.0 released, I was one of the very few that was optimistic about it, but yeah, looking back, it sucked. I did like the card decks and the new reward system, but writing was on the wall for Racing Rivals. Sure enough, less than half a year after the release of the 7.0 update, it was announced that the game would be shutting down on March 31st of 2019. No one was surprised really. I mean, it was an unfortunate ending for our favorite game, but the game didn't even feel like the original Racing Rivals that we all fell in love with. On March 31st of 2019, I hosted my final Racing Rivals livestream, and to be honest, it was the best send-off I could hope for. We talked about our memories, raced each other, and eventually some Racing Rivals legends like Pigpen and I politely hopped onto the stream to hang out with for one more time. It was a proper send-off to a shell of a once fantastic game, and while the game is gone, we'll never ever forget it. Who knows, maybe a game like it will exist again one day. Thank you guys so much for watching the short version of the story of Racing Rivals. If you guys want to see the full version, you can click the link in the top right corner. Anyway, remember to like and subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.